Good morning, everybody. It's your boy D Max. So let's talk. Um, I've been reading a lot of stories lately about parents who have been murdering their children. And the most recent one I just read, and two children were killed by their mother and their father. This was about 2 years ago, but the police just wrapped up the case. They found out that it was the mother and the father who did it, and they're being charged and prosecuted properly for it. There's another case that a couple of months ago we were talking about, and that was Ron O'Neal, who murdered his baby's mother along with his daughter and his mentally challenged child, and tried to murder his son. And he just recently went on trial, and I think they gave him the death penalty. But what I want to talk about is, why is there such a spike in parents killing their children? And I formed um, my own view on this, and I'm gonna go ahead and lay it out. So I feel like the reason we're seeing such an influx or a increase in child murder is because the parents do not have the patience to deal with their children. Um, a lot of times there's drugs involved. A lot of times there's mental health issues involved. A lot of violence and a lot of negativity and tension in the household. And there's a lack of love somewhere, because I could never imagine harming any of my children, as far as, taking their life or something like that. I've in the past given my children whoopings, and stuff like that. Nothing abusive, but spankings to let them know that their actions are going to bring consequences that they're not going to like when they make poor choices intentionally. Um, but these parents are showing that they have no remorse, they have no heart, and they have no communication. And they have, okay, all right, a child, especially a baby, because I want to address this first, and then I'm going to work my way up to the older children. When it comes to infants and little children like that who are born crying, and they learn to get what they want through crying because they can't speak and tell you what they want. You have parents who can't deal with the crying for the simple fact that they have no patience, and they have no communication skills, and they have no cognitive reasoning skills. These things are going to tell you. I remember when my children were little and they would start crying, and I would have them by myself. I wasn't one of those dads who couldn't watch my children or nothing like that. That narrative that they like to show of the dad who has no idea what to do with the child. That wasn't me. I knew what to do with my children because I paid attention to my children's needs, and I did everything I could to meet their need. And so if one of my children were crying and they were continually crying, I would go through my checklist. Are you wet? Did you poop? Do you need something to eat? Do you need to be burped? And I run down my whole checklist. And if they're still crying, well, then I'm going to get some insight from somebody else. I'm going to call my mom, or I'm going to call my dad, or I'm going to call somebody who can give me other ideas on what I can check to see what is wrong with my child, because apparently something is wrong. When my children were were born, we didn't allow everybody to pick them up and pat them up every single time they cried. And so if my children cried, then I knew that they really needed something. It wasn't just a cry just to be held and patted up and stuff. And some people might disagree with that because I know some people do the close contact method with their children where their skin is close to their children's skin so they can feel connected and all of that. But let me tell you this, there's a such thing called codependency. And you don't want to teach your child codependency right out the box. So that was me and my wife at the time. That was our thing. And so we didn't allow everybody to pick our children up and pat them up every single time they cried. And so, dealing with my children, I know my children. And so if they cried and they continued to cry after I went through my check, then I knew something else was really wrong. Maybe they were sick. Maybe we need to go to the hospital. But never in a million years did it cross my mind, I can't take this crying anymore. I'm going to kill my child. I've seen parents get angry because they couldn't stop their child from crying. And my point is this, how can you get angry at an infant whose only tool to get what they need is to cry? This is what I'm not understanding about these so-called parents who who think that murdering their child is the answer to their problems, not realizing what the consequences of that is going to be. And so now I want to raise the age up just a little bit higher. When you start to get about 5 or 6 years old and you're able to communicate with your parents, um, we often will mimic what we see our parents do. We mimic what we hear our parents say. We pick up on our parents' attributes and things of that nature. But when we're 5 and 6 years old, you're not able to really do any damage or any harm to anyone. So I don't understand how a parent can see their child as an enemy, because this is what you have to see your child as, an enemy or a threat, in order to take their lives, their young innocent lives. And so I'm trying to figure out what could cause a parent to see their child as a threat at the age of 5 or 6 years old. There's nothing other than mental health issues that could bring about this thought in a parent. You raised that child. You taught that child everything that they know thus far in their life. And so, for something to be telling you that your child is dangerous, your child is a demon, and a lot of the times, I think that's just the scapegoat that people will use to justify their lack of parenting skills and their lack of patience to be able to deal with a child. There are children all over this world who have endured horrible things at the hands of grown-ups. I was recently watching a video about this young girl. We'll just say Kim. Her name was Kim, and Kim said that she had been molested since she was 5 years old. This girl was about 16 or 17 years old now. She said her molestation started at 5 years old. She was always beaten. She was disregarded and stuff like that. And she ran away at about 10, 11 years old. So when you have a 10 or 11-year old who would rather take their chances in the streets because things are so bad at home, it's easy pickings for these traffickers. It's easy pickings for the pimps. And so we sit here and wonder how pimps be having women under such control. We're not really looking at the fact that those women were little girls who would rather take their chances in the streets because dad or stepdad or mom or stepmom at home was worse than anything that they would have to endure in the streets. And they will stay with those pimps. And some of those girls who are being trafficked will stay with their trafficker and even become traffickers themselves because of the life path that their parents set them on with their actions towards their children. And so when we see these prostitutes, we're looking at them with contempt when we need to be looking at them with empathy and sympathy, because if you even sat down and heard the beginning of their life story, it would be worse than any Lifetime movie you've ever seen. And so these children are enduring horrible actions. They're enduring horrible verbal abuse. They're enduring all the things that could totally break someone down and destroy them. And all it would take is someone to come through and be halfway nice to them to lure them in and to manipulate them into doing what they want, because everybody in this world, no matter who you are, you're looking for acceptance. Everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to feel like they're enough or they're appreciated in this world by somebody. And so just a pimp or a trafficker come by and sweet talk them, offer them something to eat because they're out here in the streets trying to make it on their own, often eating out of trash cans and stuff like that. A lot of these children that you see in Hollywood and in New York and all of the big metropolitan cities who are homeless are often from other cities, other states, because they ran away from bad situations. So, to you parents who don't know how to deal with your children, first and foremost, you shouldn't have children. And this is, I kind of see where the whole idea for um, birth control and things like that come from. I was reading an article one time and they were saying that they wanted to castrate certain people or prevent them from being able to produce children because the genetic potential for that child to become a criminal is very high, but you can't predetermine a child's life before they're even made. So that in theory, it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, you're not giving this child a chance from the get-go, because what we don't factor in when we're doing all of those statistics is the God factor. And we don't put in the statistics that that child can have God watching over them and God protecting them and God sending them in a way that would be beneficial instead of becoming a predator themselves, because not all children that have been abused and that have been molested turn out to become a victimizer. Oftentimes they do, but some don't. Some will go the opposite route and they will be an advocate for people who have went through abuse and things like that, because they found the strength to overcome and they found the strength to forgive and move forward with their lives. So you can't predetermine what a child's decision making process is going to be based on their parents. You see a lot of times that a child will have a parent that's on drugs, and that child will hate drugs and will never do drugs, will never touch a drug because of what they saw that drug do to their parents. It's all dependent on that child and the way that they think. So, in theory, like I said, in theory, that kind of makes sense to try to prevent certain people from having children, but at the same time, that's a major infringement on people's rights, and that's not giving that child a chance to be something instead of going the other route. I talked about R. Kelly, and I said, I was mentioning him and Iceberg Slim, making the parallels that, because of the lack of fathers that they had and the the mothers that they had who had very questionable occupations as sex workers and just didn't make good decisions on part of their children. And these men grew up to resent women, and they punished a lot of women for that very reason. And so um, we have to look at those things and take those into consideration. You have some that'll go one way and some that will go the total opposite way. Um, yeah, man. When a child gets to those teenage years, and because we went past the 5, 6, 7, 8, we want to skip up a little bit. And now they've hit puberty, 13, 14. Now, this is where a lot of the grooming comes in. You really, it starts around about 8. I don't know why 8 is the magic number for people molesting children, but that seems to be a reoccurring number that you hear when it comes to child molestation, 8 years old. And so between the years of 8 and 12 are those grooming years, because you're still very influential, and 9 times out of 10 the person that is um harming you is close to the family or in the family. And so that 8 to 12 time is them grooming you, because at 8 years old, you're starting to understand concepts and you're able to reason at a certain extent, starting out at 8 years old. And so as they plant seeds in your head and they groom you to be what they want, and you don't even know that's what's happening. You just feel that connection that you have with this person who's investing this time with you, and they're gonna make it seem like everything is a secret and y'all are friends and y'all have a special bond that nobody else has, just to groom you and groom that child and suck them in. That's why a lot of times children who have been offended by someone will have Stockholm syndrome. And Stockholm syndrome is when you have emotional connection to your offender, the person who's doing those things to you. And you will develop this codependence to that person, even though they're molesting you on the daily and they're beating you and all other types of abuse to you. But you have that codependency to that person because that's the only person you have to look to for anything that you need in your life. And so when these children are finally rescued from these situations, and they show remorse towards their captor, or the person who took them into bondage, um if you never been through it, you can't understand it. And so there's a whole lot of miscommunication with children and grown-ups. And the other day I did a show and I was talking about um the lack of communication between this generation, which is my generation in my 40s, and the youth. And this bridge needs to be gapped because we're losing the children on a daily basis because we're so out of touch. But we're not so far out of touch that we can't see that a child is going through some issues, because there's nothing new under the sun. It may be packaged different and it may have a different approach, but best believe it is not new, and it is not something that has never been done before in this world. And so we have to start bridging this gap with these children, and we have to start l- letting them know that we have their back. Now, not enabling, I'm not talking about enabling. There's a difference between support and enabling. There's a difference between supporting your child and making your child codependent on you for everything. So you have to find the balance. There's another theme that I'm always speaking on. You have to be able to find the balance in your relationship with your children. You can't be their friend. You have to have boundaries so that they will have respect for you. You can't force them to do everything. You can't just talk at them. You have to sit down and talk to them and let them talk back and actually listen. Open, effective communication is what would stop a lot of these horrible, atrocious acts from even taking place. But then, like I said, you have to throw in the factor of um, mental health issues. A lot of these people that I think about this on a daily basis, just how many people out here are walking around undiagnosed with severe mental health problems that are not being addressed, that are not being treated. And these people go around and they have responsibilities, they have jobs, and people's lives uh, count on them performing their job correctly. These people are functioning. I don't know what to call them. I can't say addicts, but they're functioning head cases, for lack of a better word. We see it all the time through our videos, and we get entertainment off of these people acting out in public and lashing out. But do we ever stop and take the time to say, man, this person has the freedom to go anywhere, and they have the freedom to make children and raise children with that same toxic, crazy mindset? Do we ever stop to say that? Because if we did, we wouldn't find a lot of things funny because of the aftermath or the reckoning that's going to take place when that child grows up and takes on those same toxic attributes as that parent. And so we really have to focus on the children right now. The children are the ones that are being targeted. The children are the one that's being attacked, and they're being manipulated by this society now. And so, soon as we close that gap and we become that primary influence in their life, now we know that we're not going to be the only influence in our children's life. We have social media, we have their friends, we have all of these different things that influence our children's besides us. But everything starts at home, and you have to be there to break down things that your child is going to take literal and not really have an understanding of, because they haven't lived life or experienced anything long enough to fully understand something. And so when the world gives them this half narrative that's not fully explained, we have to be there to pick up that slack. This is going to build our stronger relationships with our children, and this is going to start to change that narrative, because right now the narrative is mother against daughter, father against son, brother against brother, sister against brother. Everybody is against each other right now. That is the narrative that's being pushed in this society. And so, with everybody against each other, no wonder it's easy for a person to murder their child, or for a child to murder their parent. We have to bridge this gap. It's very important, because if we don't, pretty soon people are going to be afraid to have children, for the simple fact that they don't even know how to deal with a child, or they don't have the patience to deal with a child. And that's crazy. That is absolutely insanity, because we have everything within us to be a parent. You don't know everything as a parent. You're not going to be ready and perfect at parenting. Nobody is. You learn as you go along. But putting forth the effort to be as best a parent as you can be, and always be willing to learn and grow as a parent, and know that you're going to make mistakes and know that you can become better. That's the key to a stable child. That's the key to a stable family. So let's get some stability back in America by taking a little bit more effort into effective communication with our children, and making sure that they have every tool that they need. And I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm talking about mental tools, um emotional tools, spiritual foundation to be able to deal with this world that they're growing up in, because it's not easy. It's really not easy for these children with all the things that they're facing. And you as a parent cannot be so out of touch that you can't see that. So I'm done talking because I'm starting to repeat my point too much, but I hope y'all get the gist. And I always repeat things because I want to pound home a certain narrative and a certain idea. So I hope y'all got it. This is your boy D Mac, man. Y'all know what I say. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but the word can always heal you. I'm out.